Jenny was never supposed to have that key. She was not supposed to know the address.
She was not supposed to see the new curtains hanging inside the windows. And she definitely was not supposed to find another woman's belongings sitting inside a house Sumit had never once mentioned. But there she was, standing outside that hidden property while Sumit held a second set of keys and could barely look her in the eye. And the house itself was only the beginning. The real problem was the name appearing on the receipts, delivery records, and paperwork connected to it. Anukica. For years, Jenny defended Sumit against everyone who believed he would never completely choose her. She moved across the world for him. She faced rejection from his family. She stayed through secrets that would have ended most marriages. Now she was looking at what appeared to be another future Sumit had quietly prepared while still telling her their marriage was secure. Was Anukica simply receiving temporary help? Was Sumit's family creating a backup plan in case Jenny returned to America? Or had Sumit once again convinced himself that hiding the truth was easier than dealing with Jenny's reaction? Because this was never really about one house. It was about trust, family influence, emotional loyalty, and a pattern Jenny believed they had finally left behind. Then Anukica arrived and revealed what Sumit had promised her. But even that was not the moment that ended everything. The marriage truly changed when Jenny asked Sumit one direct question, and he could not give her an honest answer. Several days earlier, Jenny had already noticed that Sumit was behaving differently. He had started leaving home at unusual times. One morning, he said he needed to help a friend with paperwork. The next day, he claimed he had a family errand. After that, he told Jenny he was handling a private financial matter that would make more sense once everything was finished. None of those explanations sounded shocking on their own. People have errands. Families need help. Financial situations can become complicated. But the pattern was becoming impossible to ignore. Every answer Sumit gave was specific enough to end the conversation, but vague enough to reveal absolutely nothing. When Jenny asked what kind of paperwork he was handling, he said it was difficult to explain. When she asked which friend needed his help, he changed the subject. When she questioned why he had been gone for several hours, he responded with affection instead of information. And that difference matters. Affection can calm a tense moment, but affection is not honesty. A hug does not answer a question. A joke does not explain missing hours. And saying everything is fine does not prove that everything is actually fine. Sumit may have believed he was reassuring Jenny, but reassurance without information usually creates more suspicion. It tells your partner that you want the questioning to stop without giving them a real reason to trust you. And Jenny had already experienced this pattern with Sumit before. Their relationship was never built on a perfectly honest foundation. Major truths had been kept from her in the past. She knew what it felt like to believe one version of her life, while another version existed completely outside her knowledge. That history changes how a person reacts. When trust has already been damaged, even small changes in behavior can feel like warning signs. Jenny remembered the nervous explanations. She remembered how Sumit could make secrecy sound like protection. She remembered being told that he hid things because the truth was complicated, because his family would not understand, or because he was afraid of losing her. So, when the same language started returning, Jenny did not see a few harmless errands. She saw an old pattern beginning again. Then the physical clues appeared. Sumit came home carrying a bag from a furniture store. He claimed he had only been checking prices for a relative. Another evening, Jenny noticed the smell of fresh paint on his clothing. He explained that he had visited someone who was renovating a room. Once again, each explanation was technically possible. But possible does not always mean believable. Then Jenny found the receipt. It listed curtains, kitchen supplies, basic furniture, and a second mattress. None of those items had been brought into their home. Sumit had not mentioned buying them for his parents. He had not discussed helping a friend move. And he had never told Jenny that they were purchasing or renting another property. That receipt changed everything. Because a mattress is not paperwork. Curtains are not a quick family favor. Someone was preparing a home. The only question was who that home was being prepared for. At first, Jenny tried to find the least painful explanation. She wondered whether Sumit was secretly helping his parents. Their relationship with Jenny had always been complicated. Sumit may have believed that discussing money connected to his family would create another argument. That still would not excuse the secrecy, but at least it would make emotional sense. Then Jenny noticed the name connected to one of the deliveries. Anukica. That name felt familiar. Sumit had mentioned her before, but never in a way that seemed important. He had once said she was looking for a safer place to live. During another conversation, Sumit's mother described Anukica as responsible, respectful, and traditional. At the time, those comments sounded casual. Now they sounded like part of a much larger conversation Jenny had never been allowed to hear. And this is where the story becomes more complicated than a simple cheating accusation. One piece of evidence rarely tells the full story, but several ordinary details can suddenly connect. A comment about housing becomes relevant. A compliment from Sumit's mother starts sounding intentional. A furniture receipt proves that plans have already moved beyond conversation. Jenny did not immediately accuse Sumit of having a romantic relationship with Anukica. That would have been the easiest conclusion, but it was not the only possibility. What bothered Jenny was the idea that Sumit had made a serious commitment involving another woman without discussing it with his wife. Because betrayal is not always physical. Sometimes betrayal means sharing money, plans, emotional responsibility, or future commitments with another person while keeping your spouse completely uninformed. You do not need a romantic affair to create emotional disloyalty. If your spouse is the last person to learn about a major decision affecting your future, the relationship already has a serious problem. Jenny decided not to reveal everything she knew. Instead, she tested Sumit. She asked him directly whether he had recently rented or purchased another property. Sumit denied it. He did not pause and explain that the situation was complicated. He did not say he was temporarily helping somebody. He did not admit that his family had asked him to become involved. He simply denied that another property existed. That denial became more important than the house. Jenny already had part of the address. She was no longer asking because she needed information. She was asking to see whether Sumit would tell the truth when he was given the opportunity. He did not. That is the moment many viewers would probably identify as the real betrayal. Complicated family pressure can be discussed. Financial decisions can be corrected. Even questionable boundaries can sometimes be repaired. But when someone looks directly at their partner and denies something they know is true, the argument is no longer about misunderstanding. It becomes about deception. The next day, Jenny went to the address herself. The property was not large, but it looked newly prepared. Fresh curtains were hanging in the windows. Plants had been placed near the entrance. A delivery worker arrived carrying more household items. This was not an empty investment property waiting for a future tenant. Someone was getting ready to live there. Jenny asked the delivery worker whose name was connected to the order. He said, Anukica. Then Jenny noticed something even more personal. Inside the house was a framed photograph from what appeared to be a local festival. Sumit was standing beside Anukica, surrounded by members of his family. The photograph did not prove a romantic relationship. It did not prove a secret engagement. It did not confirm that Sumit planned to replace Jenny. But it destroyed his claim that Anukica was only a distant acquaintance helping with paperwork. She had clearly been welcomed into the family's private space. And for Jenny, that may have been more painful than anger. It was humiliating. Anger gives a person energy. Humiliation makes them question how many people knew the truth, while they remained completely unaware. Jenny had spent years fighting for acceptance from Sumit's family. She had tried to prove that their marriage was not temporary. She had stayed through rejection, criticism, and cultural pressure. Yet another woman appeared to be receiving the kind of family approval Jenny had struggled to earn. That is why the house became more than property. To Jenny, it looked like a replacement plan. And just as she prepared to leave, Sumit arrived carrying another set of keys. There are moments when a person realizes that the explanation they prepared is no longer going to work. This was one of those moments. Sumit could not pretend the address was unfamiliar. He could not explain away the keys. He could not claim Jenny had misunderstood a random receipt. She was standing directly in front of the secret. Jenny asked him one question. Who is this house really for? Sumit's first explanation was that the property was supposed to become a surprise. He claimed it might eventually serve as an investment or a source of income for them. But that answer immediately created more problems. A surprise for Jenny would not have Anukica's name on the deliveries. An investment property would not already contain someone's personal belongings. And a shared financial plan should include both people in the marriage. So Jenny continued questioning him. That was when Sumit's explanation started changing. First, he said Anukica needed temporary housing. Then, he claimed his family had pressured him to help her. Finally, he said he had hidden everything because he knew Jenny would misunderstand. That final explanation may have been the biggest red flag. When someone says, I hid it because you would misunderstand, they are moving responsibility away from their own behavior. The message becomes, I did not lie because my actions were questionable. I lied because your reaction would have been unreasonable. That is not accountability. It is an attempt to control how the deception is interpreted. Jenny was not upset because she misunderstood an innocent situation. She was upset because Sumit had denied the house existed after she asked him directly. There is a major difference. Jenny asked why Anukica's belongings were already inside. Sumit insisted that nothing romantic had happened. He said he was only helping someone who needed a safe place to live. But helping someone does not require lying to your spouse every day. And this is why focusing only on physical cheating creates such a low standard for loyalty. A person can hide money, make private commitments, involve their family, and create long-term emotional responsibilities with someone else. Then they defend everything by saying, nothing physical happened. But trust can be destroyed long before romance is proven. Then Anukica arrived. Her reaction suggested that she had not expected Jenny to be there. She looked uncomfortable and appeared unsure about what Sumit had already told his wife. That reaction revealed something important. Jenny and Anukica may have been operating with two completely different versions of the same arrangement. Jenny believed Sumit had hidden a house connected to another woman. Anukica believed Sumit had made a serious promise about her future security. According to Anukica, Sumit had told her she could remain in the house for as long as she needed. She believed his family supported the arrangement. More importantly, she understood that Sumit would continue helping her in the future. That completely changed the meaning of the house. Temporary help should have a clear ending. A long-term promise creates an ongoing responsibility. Anukica did not claim that she and Sumit were secretly involved romantically. Instead, she revealed something emotionally more complicated. Sumit had apparently discussed balancing his marriage to Jenny with responsibilities chosen by his family. This was no longer just about giving somebody temporary shelter. It was about creating a future in which Anukica remained permanently connected to Sumit. Jenny asked whether Anukica believed she would eventually become part of Sumit's family. Anukica hesitated. And sometimes hesitation creates more suspicion than a direct answer. A confident no could have ended that question. But silence suggests the possibility was either discussed or intentionally left unclear. Unclear promises can create powerful expectations. Sumit may never have directly offered romance. His family may never have officially called Anukica a replacement. But if everyone behaved as though Jenny's future was uncertain while Anukica's role continued growing, then emotional expectations were already being created. Sumit argued that his intentions had been misunderstood. He explained that Anukica had supported his family during a difficult time. His parents believed he owed her help. From Sumit's perspective, providing housing was an act of responsibility. But Jenny responded with the question that exposed the real issue. Why did you build security for her by destroying mine? That question cuts through every excuse. Sumit may have believed he was doing something generous. But good intentions do not erase secret decisions. Family loyalty does not excuse dishonesty. Helping someone vulnerable does not require excluding your spouse. And the impact of a decision matters just as much as the intention behind it. Sumit finally admitted that the house had never been intended as an investment for Jenny. His family had helped arrange the property because they were worried about his future. They believed Jenny might eventually return to America. They worried about her age, her health, her homesickness, and the possibility that life in India would become too difficult. So the house became part of a backup plan. Someone dependable would remain nearby. Someone approved by the family would stay connected to Sumit. His future would no longer depend entirely on Jenny remaining in India. Sumit insisted this was not a replacement marriage arrangement. He described it as practical protection against an uncertain future. But imagine how that explanation would sound to Jenny. She had crossed continents. She had accepted distance from her children and grandchildren. She had tolerated years of family rejection and public criticism. She had stayed when leaving would have been easier. And while she believed those sacrifices had finally created stability, Sumit and his family were quietly preparing for her departure. Worse, Sumit had helped them do it. This reveals the biggest recurring problem in Sumit and Jenny's relationship. Sumit often tries to satisfy two opposing sides without clearly choosing either one. He wants Jenny to believe she is his priority. At the same time, he wants his family to believe their concerns still guide his decisions. Instead of setting firm boundaries, he delays, hides information, and tries to keep everyone calm. That may prevent one immediate argument, but it creates a much larger explosion later. Avoiding conflict is not the same thing as resolving conflict. In fact, the person who constantly claims to hate drama may be creating the most drama by refusing to communicate honestly. Sumit may have told himself that he was protecting Jenny from unnecessary stress. He may have believed the house was only a precaution that did not need to be discussed unless Jenny actually decided to leave. But that reasoning treated Jenny like a temporary participant in her own marriage. Everyone else was allowed to discuss what would happen if she left. Jenny was the only person excluded from that conversation. She asked Sumit whether he would have ever told her about the house if she had not discovered it herself. Sumit could not answer. And that silence became the real confession. It did not prove romance with Anukica. It proved that secrecy was part of the plan. Viewers would probably be divided over this moment. Some fans might argue that Sumit's family was simply being realistic. Jenny has always had the option of returning to America, while Sumit would remain in India facing the consequences. From that perspective, preparing for the future may sound practical. A section of the audience might also defend Anukica. She may have accepted the house based entirely on what Sumit and his family told her. She did not make marriage vows to Jenny. Sumit did. But many viewers would likely focus on Sumit's direct denial. The moment Jenny asked about another property, he had the opportunity to explain everything. The truth would have created an argument, but it would also have shown some respect for the marriage. Instead, he denied the house existed. That turned a complicated family decision into a deliberate lie. Other viewers would probably question why the family's backup plan needed to center on a woman they clearly admired. Why was Anukica repeatedly described as traditional and dependable? Why was she included in family photographs? Why was Sumit promising her long-term security? Those details would naturally create speculation. But speculation is not proof. There was still no confirmed romance inside this storyline. Jenny did not need proof of romance to decide that a boundary had been crossed. A marriage is not a courtroom. A person does not need to prove the worst possible betrayal before admitting that trust has already been damaged. Jenny gave Sumit one final choice. She told him to return the keys and the arrangement and tell his family that decisions affecting their marriage could no longer happen behind her back. Sumit did not immediately agree. He said forcing Anukica to leave would be cruel. He asked Jenny to give him time to find another solution. And that hesitation revealed the emotional conflict more clearly than anything else. Jenny was not asking whether Sumit cared about Anukica's safety. She was asking whether he understood the seriousness of deceiving his wife. But Sumit responded as though Jenny wanted him to abandon someone vulnerable. That allowed him to present himself as compassionate while making Jenny appear unreasonable. This is another dangerous relationship pattern. One partner creates a situation without permission. Then, when the other partner objects, the consequences of correcting that situation are used to make them feel guilty. Sumit made the promise. Sumit provided the house. Sumit hid the arrangement. Yet Jenny was being asked to feel responsible for what might happen if the arrangement ended. Sumit told her not to destroy their marriage over one house. Jenny answered that the house had not destroyed anything. The lies had. That was the turning point. Jenny was no longer asking Sumit to prove that Anukica meant nothing.